Good evening. Welcome back. We look forward continuing, maybe even concluding the chapter. No guarantees, all depends on the time. But there's a possibility. 174, page 174, we're holding in chapter Yud 10 of Shari Be'emunah, literally translated the gateway of oneness and faith. We kind of quite frequently translate the title over here because, as we repeat again, the extraordinary study of Shari Be'emunah, extraordinary presentation of the Alter Rebbe in a segment which has all of 12 chapters, brings us into a gate of true oneness and faith, literally translated that we never come out of this gate, not necessarily we need, like we mentioned the other day, not necessarily we need to look for to come out of the gate. Why not stay there? It's just exhilarating. The excitement, the ecstasy, entering into a space of truth, which is coming associated with the Hashem Echad, the Hashem Elikim Emes. So why we want someone come out, but whatever it is, one never comes out the same way he came in. And even though I think maybe it's a bit too frequently mentioning this, but in the end of the day, it's just because whenever we open up a Shari Be'emunah, Tanya in general, it's not another study, another pirush, another vart. It's kind of entering, finally we have a shar, you're trying to get to something. It's this gate, that gate, you get this, through this gate it'll maybe be mediocrely get what you're looking for. But the Shari Be'emunah, Alter Rebbe Shari Be'emunah, this is a gateway, really appreciating that Hashem Echad, which a Yid proclaims twice a day or more than that even, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and it's a gateway. When you enter it, you have the opportunity to have a full appreciation of what Yichud, what Achdus Hashem is all about. So, Shari Be'emunah, and we mention this namely for the newcomers, maybe even for those who are joining, to know what we're learning. It's not just another pirush or a pirushal. It's the real deal. The real deal of what Achdus Hashem is all about. So we're holding page 10, page Yud, which is the 10th chapter, page 174 in the original text. If you're following in the English text, you can see it's pretty much just a bit over the half of the chapter. And where we're holding on Kedisa b'Medrash. I think maybe we read this line, but just to begin over here, Kedisa b'Medrash, like it says in Medrash. Now, Kedisa b'Medrash naturally is coming from a thought process of what he's in the previous part of the page, and then the whole chapter Yud. So as we mentioned, it's not fair really to take time. I say it, yet sometimes we can take a little too much time of the present class to repeat what we learned in the past, but it's really not fair. TanyaOnline.com, or wherever you're watching it, just if you follow it, you were there last week, you were on, so you know where we're coming from. What is the Alter Rebbe saying over here? And if you're a newcomer, it's really a click away, without exaggeration. TanyaOnline.com, the original website. You have this class, you have all the previous classes come up and also in the same fashion. It's easy to follow the text, find the content of this that you're looking for corresponding to where the text would be holding, or you'd be holding with the text. It's literally easy, extremely easy. It's built in a way, namely the experience, when I say an easy experience, is namely because the text is on a separate scroll bar, so it's easy to follow the class and so on. So the last two classes, including the whole Shari Be'emunah, and for that matter, as we mentioned, Kuti Amarim as well, we merited to conclude the Kuti Amarim, which all comes up in the same fashion. So we did mention also the perfect sequence of the Alter Rebbe's the chapters, the way he built up any presentation, if it was in Shari Be'emunah. Extremely unique. You got to follow, and for that matter, not always you figure it out right away, but you learn it time and again. You goes, whoa, that precision. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, and Daled, this new idea, which Alter Rebbe introduces Daled, Hey, brings it home, and Vav, Zayin elaborates on this, Ches and Tesa, definitely. As we mentioned the other day, coupled together. Yud introduces as a follow-up to Tes, but it's kind of an idea why the Chacham and the Chachmei is called the Midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oiros, and this is kind of just to get into today's class, they called it Eires to tell us how bottle they are, how they stand in a complete, absolute annulment to the Mar, to the Illuminated, to the Hashem, the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah, this is words, hard to pick up everything from these few words. However, it is just worth it to enter into last class or last two classes to understand when we say Eir is bottle in the Moir, because the Eir doesn't begin where the light shines. It's always within the illuminator. But within the illuminator, it has to be within the illuminator, because if it extends itself out of the illuminator, the Alter Rebbe's word, for sure, it's there within the illuminator. It's 100%. And as if it's able to start from the end of the illuminator to express itself in a way that you can identify it, or if it's there, this is what you can see. This is what we do see. If it's the sun, the warmth and the light of the sun out of the ball of the sun, how much more so it is present within the ball of the sun, within the illuminator. But within the illuminator, you can't identify it. Don't even try, because it's all what is overwhelmingly present is the illuminator itself. And that is again a sign of the total bittul, the self-annulment of the Eir within the Meir. And that's the reason why the Chacham is, again, very briefly, got to go to the classes in order to see this a little more in elaboration, this idea, especially the way the Alter Rebbe explains this idea. And as such, the Eir is really always bottle of the Meir. The only thing is, so what, there's no Eir, there's no Chacham Bin, and these are the Midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which the Chacham is called Eiris. So there's no Chochmah Bina Das, Gvura Tiferes. I mean, obviously there is. What do you mean telling me it's not? So the Alter Rebbe says, L'gabei Anivroim, in the face of creation, every level of creation. Alter Rebbe says, Elyenim, Etachtenim. That's where it comes into play. And we spoke about also the last week, in the very last class, Hanhogosam, the whole idea of Hashem's Hanhoga and Chesed, and the whole build-up. There's something happening, and it's happening. We can appreciate that it's happening via these midas, via the Chacham Bina Das. We spoke about all creation is by design, precise design. Again, not to need to repeat the last 2-3 lines, but L'gabei Nivroim, again, the punchline here, or what Alter Rebbe is saying, L'gabei, in the face of Nivroim, yeah, they exist. And we gave the whole example last week. We took time to show something that in essence it appears it exists so emphatic. Like we gave this example, that the child, the pupil feels that this is a storyteller, but he's not a storyteller. He's a goy noilam. He spoke in the context of Torah. He's somebody who has hands-on kol ha-Torah kulo, as we gave again that example we gave, an amkon, someone who understands Torah extremely deep, and his whole life is Torah, means his whole mind is about the depth and the breadth of Torah, but yet the child perceives this master as a storyteller, but he's not a storyteller. So you can see something that appears so emphatic and in a particular style and character, but it's not so at all. We gave the example again. Click away last week's class. We try to give that example, and the same thing. Like the midas are bottle l'gabei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. El l'gabei Anivroim, it appears again. L'gabei Anivroim, Hashem did use these 10 spheres. In other words, you see Nivroim, you see all these 10 spheres of HaKadosh Baruch Hu come into play. It's like the master bringing and introducing parables, which he doesn't need these parables. He doesn't need these examples. He has the message, the nimshal, as it's called, the message. He has it so clear. He doesn't need it. And it's not part of who he is. It's just because he wants to convey this to the pupil. So he introduces different ideas, which is not intrinsically connected to him at all, for that matter. And that's what he says. Again, you need to see to perfectly come into this class. You have to probably need to go to see what the Alter Rebbe says, the previous class and the class before. So the L'gabei Nivroim is the message of last week's class, and he brings the medrash. The world was created with 10 dvarim. These are not the Asar Mamoris that we made it clear last week. That Asar Mamoris is all the way down. In other words, in the spheres associated with Malchus. We'll get there, but with 10 dvarim, he's referring to not the Mamoris of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are dvarim which are starting from Chochmah being the Das, while the Mamor is associated with the last sphere of Malchus. Again, we'll look forward to explaining. That's how the Dvarim Nivrei Elam, Chochmah, Bisvur, V'das, wisdom, understanding, knowledge. Obviously, they have different connotations. In other words, we've got different ways, rather, explaining. There's different terminologies explaining Chochmah, Tvuna, Das, but generally, we know it's Chochmah, Tvuna, Das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, kind of broadly translated, which we spoke so many times. What's Chochmah, what's Bina, what's Das, and the difference between the two, between the three, namely in the third chapter of Lakutei Amorim, for that matter, also click away. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with Chochmah, Tvuna, and Das. And he brings a pasuk, Hashem created, established land with Chochmah. You establish the land, when you say establish the land with Chochmah, means that you see an Oret, you should know it's established with Chochmah. And in Canaan Shabbai B'Tvuna, he erects heaven B'Tvuna. So you see Tvuna, Bina, Hashem's Bina, playing a role in the erection of heaven. Be'edai Te'tahemis Nivku, with his Das. The Tahemes, which means it's the under, it's a Tahem Rabbah, generally when you say Tahem Rabbah, the under terrain, which ultimately plays a big role in this which is going on the surface, that's literally called the Tahem Rabbah. We find the Lashon in Torah, for that matter, that when it came to the Mabul, it says the Tahem Rabbah opened up. It wasn't only water coming from above, but from the underground, under the terrain, there was also the opening of the waters, which both together from the rain above and the niftechu, the arubis hashamayim and arubis ha'oretz. In other words, it's not underground. Arubis also opened up, which caused the flood. Again, a lashon and Torah. So we say the bedaite b'Hashem's das tahemis nifko. These tahemes were split open. And again, it's in the context of the formation of Eilam. So we see over here that the world was created, and it was the Chochmah Bina Das plays an important role in the establishment and creation of the world. Ukimai Elio Nagalio, Navi said in the famous passage Elio, that Pikas Asati Kunin, that you allowed to emerge from yourself the 10 corrections. Literally, Tikkun means a correction, but it's referring to the 10 spheres. And it says, Tikkun also has the connotation of beautifying oneself. It says in the Torah, when it speaks of Silbash, Gever, Simlasisha, and it says also Litikune, Lashon Litikune there, it's about beautifying, because every sphera beautifies the personality who has this sphera, that has this meaning. Someone has kindness. So if he doesn't have kindness and he doesn't have discipline, he doesn't have netzach and hate, so it's a bit dull. But when he has these attributes, each attribute's beautify his personality. Obviously, if there's more chesed, it's more beautiful. If there's harmony, it's really beautiful. As it's spoken in the Sifrei Musar, starting from the Rambam himself, harmony in our one's midas bring out the true beauty within the person. But it's the midas that are bringing out this beauty, and so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu's called these as Eliyahu Navi called Hashem's as his spheres as Tikunin. 10 tikkunin, which is these 10 are Hashem's midah, starting from Chochmah Midas, which beautify HaKadosh Baruch Hu one way or another. Again, because they express a particular expression. If it's Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, which again each one, especially when they combine, they consolidate and amalgamate with each other. They harmonize with each other. In the end of the day, they bring out a certain tikkun, a certain beauty within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol, and Hashem Eliyahu Navi continues, and you call these 10 tikkunin Asar Sfirin. Yeah, those are the Esses Sfiras, which we know, Chochmah Bina Das, the Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, you say Malchus. And Eliyahu Navi says, it's not that you have these 10 Sfiras. It's a pikas Asar Tikkunin. It comes out from you, which means it's not intrinsically connected to you. And he goes on, the whole purpose is not these Esed Tikkun are not personifying you. No, you are beyond Esed Tikkunin. You're beyond any definition. Like the Alter Rebbe writes, even negating any definition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kol Hashem Yitzchak Lei becomes a mockery, like we learned in the chapter Yud. Click away. Which is even negating Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's so deep that you can't understand. No, it's not a right expression, because Chachma is not attributed at all to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when you have the Asar Tikkun Elio, makes it clear it's not about who you are, it's La'anhoga Ve'inolmi. It's to conduct the Eilamis. Al means steaming, and again the Al goes together with the steaming. There's different Eilamis. There's the hidden world, the Leis Galion, which are not revealed, the Al is Galion, and the revealed world. Novahoin, and in these worlds, Iskesias, you hide yourself. What are these two worlds? These two worlds, meaning to say it's not one and two, meaning to say it's a whole style, it's a whole expression. It says in a number of places. See this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol midvari. So it says in Chassidus that the Rebbe himself gives, actually I believe he brings it in Yud Aleph also, brings it in Yud Aleph, the difference of thought and speech. They're both expressions of the person. For that matter, just like Dibur is a lavush, a garment, it's not part of the makeup of the person. It's something it's a garment, the way he expresses himself to others. We can appreciate easily when it comes to speech, because if a person, there was no other person in this world, if you think about it, right? We virtually would not need to speak. The whole speech is there because we need to convey something, what is going within ourselves for someone else. I want to convey to the other person an idea, what I'm thinking, or teach somebody what a concept or an idea, tell somebody something so simple and trivial, pass me the cup. It's something that there is other party which I'm trying to convey a message to. That's where the whole speech comes in, which is the idea of garments. Why a person wears garments? Not for himself, right? The whole concept, conventionally accepted, the idea that a person it presents up with garments is because you need to present yourself out of your own domain. When you're within yourself, by yourself, you don't really need garments. Garments is because you have to express yourself to someone, you have to present yourself to someone else. So then there's the idea of putting on a garment, a lavush. And again, also there's different types of garments. You're playing a sport, there's one type of garment. An executive meeting, usually you come executively looking. So because the garments are a way that I go away from my own domain and I express myself. If it's a business interaction or any other type of interaction, that's why there is different type of clothing. So to the whole idea of speech is the way I go away from myself for someone else. There's a zulas, it's explained in Chassidus, in Lagabi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean zulas? Not to go into it now, but it's a way of expressing. That's why it's called the lavush. But also machshav is called the lavush. As the Rebbe writes famously in the Likutei Amorim, Perek Chav, the end of Perek Chav, machshava, eisius are formed in machshava. We even think in certain languages, which tells us again, Aisi Machshava is the first step of the person leaving his system to develop something for someone else. From Aisi Machshava, it would form Aisi Adibur, and then eventually the person would talk, convey, relate. Yet, we all can understand there's a difference of Aisi Machshava and Aisi Adibur. Aisi Machshava is these ISIS, that's a formation of ISIS already, kind of leaving myself the way I inform myself by myself. For that matter, the Alter Rebbe writes it clear. For that matter, in that very chapter of Perek Chav, in Midas, in Chachma Bina Das, there is no ISIS at all. Because that's the person the way he stands for himself by himself. Doesn't need ISIS. There are no ISIS in Midas. ISIS, the formation of ISIS begin in Machshava. But again, we could all understand Machshava, even though there's a whole formation of Isis, and eventually they will develop in deeper, but Machshava is the way I think. Still, it's within my mind and within myself. You don't know what I'm thinking. At least most of the stuff. Meaning to say, sometimes you see somebody has a worried composure, a worried countenance, so obviously you see there's something bothering, but you don't know what thought is something, the way this person's still atzmei. So there's the kind of, it's right in between. There's a formation of letters, but nonetheless it's la'atzmai. It's a expression, yet it's an expression still la'atzmai. Dibur, what you say, it's perceived pretty much in the way the way you say it and what you're saying, the content, it's right there. Please pass me the cup. So you didn't say pass me the fork, or anything which has naturally much more significance. People wish they would be able to put their speech back within their system. Because once you say something, it's out of your system and the other person hears and identifies and can't deny usually. Well, there's a concept of taking something out of context, understandably. Everything can be convoluted, but generally, you say it's something which is, it's already manifest, it's already there. Conversely, when you talk about thoughts, it's so too when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lahavdil. So there is the Olam is the world which created with Hashem's thoughts, which means they're already an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're already a creation. They're an emanation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu leaving himself, creating a world. But those worlds are hidden worlds, similar to thoughts. It's atheist, but nonetheless it's hidden, as opposed to the worlds which are Yisgalian. They're much more manifest, they're much more revealed, or they are revealed. Those are the worlds which come from Hashem's Dibur. This is in brief what's explained in Kabbalah and Chassidus, but obviously there's a deeper meaning to it, which is really not for now, because not to go away from the message over here, but it's worthwhile to mention. You say Yiskisias, in a sense, what worlds are more godly worlds? The Alma Diskasia, the domain or the worlds are associated with Iskasia, or Alma Disgalia. One would suggest on the surface, oh, that's hidden and this is revealed. The opposite is true. Meaning to say the Alma Diskasia carries so much more godliness. So even in the context of this example that we just gave, Machshava is still part of you. Yeah, it's a way that you went away from yourself. There's the formation of Isis, like we said, people even think in certain languages. You went away from yourself, the way you're for yourself, by yourself, and it's still within you, Machshava. And so to those worlds, they're Iskasia. What are they covered with? They're covered with the overwhelming ambiance of godliness. So the Olam Shabahem, which is the world, as the Gemara says, Olam is Melajin Elam Behester, which is the concealment of the reality of godliness. This Olam dimension, this Olam dynamic is hidden because it's overwhelmed with the godly reality. As such, the Olamness, if you will, that Helen Behester is not such Helen Behester because it's so much overwhelmed by the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Conversely, Almidis Gali, what's Begoli? What's revealed? What is manifest? The Olam is manifest. The Helen Behester, the concealment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is manifest. It's Kaviyachal separated, much more certainly from the Almidis Gali. Again, separated on the surface, similar to the person's speech. It's already left the system. Now, the Alter Rebbe makes it very clear, and actually Peter Chafalev, that the dibur by a human being leaves his system and you can't put it back. Because Baruch Hu, no such a thing to say it left the system, because Hashem is Malekal Etzkaveda, less is Hapanim, there's no place which is the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so it doesn't. Where did it leave? Did Hashem stop over here? The dibur left HaKadosh Baruch Hu? No. There's no such a thing. So even if it Kaviyachal steps away, it's always within HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's the message there. In the end of the day, Hashem Hu Elikim, but nonetheless it is compared to Dibur, because Dibur, Kaviyachal allowed things to come into being, creation to come into being, worthwhile. Always worthwhile to look into Perek Chaf at any given time. It's just a boost in Emunas Hashem of actually Likutei Amorim. Likutei Amorim, Shaykh Limoni only has 12 chapters, the 20 and 21st chapter, but again, it's not the topic of today's class. For that matter, Shaykh B'Muneh carries the same message. Perek Hey, Perek Vav, Hashem Hu Elikim, actually Perek Vav and Perek Chaf Aleph in Likutei Amorim conclude in the same way. That even the Dibur by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not really Yetze. It's not going anywhere. It's always within HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the area where there's no ACS, means say Hashem Hu Elikim. Again, not for now. And you can't hold yourself back when you think about the beautiful translation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling us, as Alter Rebbe rather, explaining it so clearly, Hashem Hu Elikim. It's hard to skip over, but to focus on the message. This is all lanhog of to conduct, and this is where the 10 dvarim, the asara dvarim, nivra ha'elam legabei nivraim, like he makes it, the Eliyahu Navi makes it very clear. This is all lanhog of It's not this is not what defines HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chas v'shalom, to say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is defined by Chachma, B'bina, B'das, in Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. No, not at all. It's lanhog of Almin. Almin Stimini starts, and Almin Dies Galion. Uvahayin, and these items is kisiyas, you hide yourself. Because yourself, who you are, is transcendent of all that. As we learned, explained, elaborated, articulated in detail in the overall Shaykh but in the last chapter and the last 3 chapters, starting from Ches. And Al Rebbe goes on, Al Derech Moshel, similarly, where do we see it evidently? The first day of creation, Niglas Midas HaChesed. Hashem's kindness was revealed, was manifest. And it's clue, that when Hashem's chesed is revealed, so first of all, the idea of chesed, where do we find Hashem's chesed coming to expression in the first day? Well, Hashem created Eir. In other words, Hashem created lichtigkeit. Light is associated with chesed. When it's dark, it's gloom and doom is when it's dark. It's not comfortable. It's associated with contraction. It's associated with darkness, which is gvura, which is again the whole idea of gvura has that side. Even though gvura, there's the positive idea of gvura, it's a discipline and so on, but it's about contraction of the air. It's about not giving, preventing of giving. Air is lichtigkeit, air is extension, air is expansion, especially Hashem's air. So we right away see the connection with Chesed. But Alter Rebbe tells us, and we'll try to learn maybe these 2 spheres. Yeah, we won't be able to finish it today, but you should have known already by now how the pace goes. But again, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we finish a Perek of that this day. The main thing is to understand it clearly. The Alter Rebbe says that every midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really kolul, is included from all the other midas. And that's generally the beauty of Eilam Hashem's midas. Even more so, it's spoken in Chassidus, the difference of Eilam Atayu, the world of chaos and the world of tikkun, correction, because the reason why Eilam Atayu, again, we're not discussing, it's not a class about Eilam Atayu. You could find it in a number of places. With Eilam Atayu, Eilam Tikkun, but the Eilam Atayu, it says, there was the Shviras HaKelim. It didn't work. That's the word. That's the point. That's the point of the terminology. The world of chaos. Chaos means say it just didn't work, and the reason it didn't work because the midas didn't harmonize with each other. And we can understand that when a midah, any expression doesn't allow any other, even opposite presentation, opposite idea to harmonize with it, it's not going to work in every area in life. Harmony is the way to go. Now, it doesn't mean you compromise chas v'shalom on something which is absolute in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Never. Halacha is one of the things which are connected to the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We never allow halacha to be compromised. But a midah, a character, it's a person has to be always rach kakana, it means softer, meaning to say allowing even an opposite character to play a role, even when I'm expressing this character which is opposite in nature. Because in tikkun, that's why it's mitukan. So the element of tikkun, that's where there's stability because there's harmony. One midah harmonizes with another midah, integrates with another midah. So the Alter Rebbe says this began at the very beginning of creation. When it says with the first day there was expression of chesed, and for that matter, even though it says basara dvarim, and it starts with chacham b'tvuna v'das, which we understand that's the design within creation. But when it says b'sheshes yamim kishesh samas Hashem seshmayim v'sa'aretz, so it says b'sheshes yamim. Forget the lashon of the pasuk actually. So it says in Zayir that the shishas yamim, these are the 6 midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the entire world. So the first day was the Eir, right, that's Chesed, but yeah, if it's Hashem's light, Hashem is infinite, and Hashem's kindness is infinite. We explained so many times, particularly when you talk about the Chesed of Atzilus. Atzilus is a world which houses the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Every mid of Atzilus expresses the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if it's Chesed, it's believable Chesed, and if Chesed is this which creates the air, or allows the air to come into being, so the air had to be infinite, and it wouldn't be limited, and if it's not limited, the world cannot comprehend and tolerate the infinite air of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? You can't even sit in a room where the light is too bright, not infinite light, but it's just a bit too bright, it just doesn't allow you to function. Make it a little less, a little more dim. So I could appreciate the light because it was dark. It would be difficult to function and to read and to do what I need to do. So I have the light on, but a bit too much light, it just doesn't, it's hard to comprehend, as we all know it. The light is too bright. And this, again, this is a light just, it's too bright. It doesn't carry the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or light of infinity, because that not only would be uncomfortable, just, we wouldn't be able to coexist with that light. So if it's Hashem's chesed which is coming to expression, and that creates Hashem's light, it's lichtit, it's chesed, Hashem's kindness. So how do we continue to exist? Or even the entire world can exist. The world is a finite world, and it would be overwhelmed by the Eir of Hashem's light, because it's infinite. So that is, here you see right there the virtue of the harmony of the Midas of Elam Hatikun, which is the Midas of Atzilus. It harmonizes with Gvura. Gvura puts discipline to the Eir of Chesed, which is being expressed through the Eir, the light, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the first day. And Al Rebbe is going to show you later also how every midah ultimately is kolul from the other, which allows the midah to come into play. And there should be stability in this which it's playing into, or creating, or expressing itself in that area, and so on. Or creating that. And it's stable because it harmonized with another midah. So here the Alter Rebbe says again, when it comes to Eir, he said, maybe Reish is the first day of creation. Niglas midas chesed. Chesed was revealed, but this chesed was called midas of Akdeshus, included of all Hashem's other midas. So Ritzenu Chmaseh, and also Hashem's desire, Hashem's chachma, Hashem's bina, and Hashem's das. Muluboshin ba invested in that one midah of chesed. Harmony is not only with all the other 6 spheres, but in all the 10 spheres. Ubo Rabbo Asayir, he created with this chesed, he created the light, but by Hashem saying Yehi Eir. There's already a mimer. We're going to soon see, because if it's the mimer, you can find different. You need a mimer to also formulate that expression of chesed, that it should come in an expression of eir, of lichtigkeit, as opposed to, for example, water also comes from chesed. Again, we're going to see this in Perek Yud Aleph, why the maimorim, if you have the asarat dvarim, but in this case, it comes into in the saying of Shibchinas, Yispashtos, Vamshochos Ha'eir La'elam, which is the expression, the evolving of Hashem's light, manifestation, that is, of Hashem's light to this world. Milmaila, from on high, Yispashtos Be'elam, and its manifestation in this world, Miseifa Elam Ad Seifa, from one end of the world to the other end of the world, and that's clearly associated with Midas HaChesed. Chesed is kindness, is giving, is expression. Extending oneself is Chesed, and that's the nature of the Eir. It shines from one side of the world to the other. And for that matter, it's important to know that there's the physical Eir, which does shine from one side of the world to the other. When the sun comes out, as an example, again, the question is, the sun came up on the 4th day of creation. There was the Eir before. We're not going into it now, but the first day there was Eir. Hashem says, Yehi Eir, and there was light, and that light shone from one end of the world to the other. And it says in a number of places in Kabbalah and Chassidus that it's not only the physical light, but there was a light which shone from one end of the world to the other, which was a deeper a light of insight and so on. Not to go into it now, but you see the connection to Midas HaChesed. But because it also is combined. In other words, it harmonizes. It is consolidated together with the Midas of Gvura. What is Gvura? Gvura is about discipline. Gvura is about contraction. So therefore, that Eir, that light, wasn't a spiritual light like the supreme spiritual light on high, which the world cannot tolerate. Understandably so, the world is a finite world. And the reason why the Eir came in the formation that it did, it's actually that light which actually created in the first day of creation. Creation, it came down into this physical, finite creation. So that tells us, it's so telling, in other words, of the harmony of the spheres one with each other. And this chesed, you see the connection, the fusion, the harmony with the midah of gevura, which is discipline, it places discipline kaviyachol on that ayr, that it could be a ayr which could manifest in as a physical ayr in a physical world. That's what he says in his labish be'elam hazeh. It was also invested in this physical world, and if it's invested in this physical world, this physical world is a finite world. It's a finite world. It's a world of vul v'tachlis, which means there's borders and this is the very makeup of Elam Hazeh. Every part of Elam Hazeh, we need not to explain, is limited. And it's finite and associated with the keich, or the keich gvul, which means the keich of finitude, which exists inherently in Elam, and that's where the air came down. So there's something which needed to contract that air, that it should not express itself as the infinite chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because then it would never be would never be able to be a Eretz Gashmistic Eretz, if you will, and certainly would not be able to come into a finite world. And therefore it had to harmonize, had to fuse together with Gvura, because all Hashem's midas are harmonized, rather, one with each other. And his klulis, they combine with each other. Each one complements the other. And he shows you over here that this world is Mahalo Tovkov Shalom Arasakim and Mizramayrav. He says, where do you see the finitude dimension or expression or persona, if you will, of this Elam Hazeh? Yeah, this whole Elam Hazeh. It's large, very big. We spoke about the sun last week. The sun is 167 times greater than the planet, but yeah, it's not 168, not 169. So there's everything about Elam, including the greatest, the most grandest of creation. And this is the creation which we can identify, the stars. And I mean, we do understand the grandness of these creations associated with such an Eibishter, which it does express a certain kayach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even though it says so many places in Kabbalah. See this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu becoming a bayra even to the most grandest creations as a yerida, as a descent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Leiza HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bayra Elam. This is not the prasad of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem being a bayra. No, a bayra is a yerida, the degradation in the face of the Eibishter himself, which is transcendent of being a bayra. But nonetheless, you see like the sun, but nonetheless it's all finite. In other words, the sun does express a certain godless of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is 167 times the planet. That's pretty grand. But nonetheless, it's mugbal, and so to this world. Yeah, it's a huge world, but the Gemara says, the Medrash says that this world, if you want to walk from one end of the world to the other, take you 500 years. Yeah, that's a long walk. And without a stop, for that matter. And a person cannot really walk without a stop. That's impossible. As we know, it's impossible to walk without a stop. He's a human being. But nonetheless, theoretically, if you walk without a stop from one end of the world to the other, it will take you 500 years. And that's a long time. You have to live 500 years. You have to walk without interruption. And that's a long time. In other words, that shows you how grand the world is. But it's 500. It's walking. It's the proximity, what would take a human being to walk 500 years, not 501 years. Tells you that the world is still a finite world. It says vertically, if one wants to walk from Aretz to Rakia, to the heaven, first heaven even, right? There's the Sheva Rakia, the Gemara tells us, the 7 heavens, but the first one, between Elam and the first, the Aretz and the first Rakia, also would take 500 years. For a person, in other words, the amount of time that it would take 500 years for a human being to walk. In other words, if a human being walked 500 years, that's the proximity from earth to heaven. So it's 500, very far, understandably so, which shows the grandness of this world of Elam Hazeh. But it's still a clear demonstration of the finite dimension of Elam Hazeh. It's 500, not 501. Or maybe not even 500 in a day. You're at the Rakia already. So if an Eir came in, so it tells you again how this Eir is an Eir which is on its own. It's not a spiritual Eir, it's an Eir which manifested physically, but beyond that it entered into a world which is a finite world. So the Eir there would have to be a contraction of there. There had to be discipline. That Eir should not expand itself the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite chesed expands itself. Or by definition, the chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bli gvul. As such, it expresses itself in a manner of infinite. And in this case, there was a hakbala, a limitation, a discipline on that area. Again, demonstrative of the harmony of the Hashem's midas, the hiskalus, the combination, the fusion of Hashem's midas. And then he goes on to the second day, which, Be'ezus Hashem, we look forward to learning the next week. And what is Alter Rebbe getting at in the end? He's not just telling us about Hashem's midas. He's telling you about Hashem's midas. He's showing you that every day there was another midah came to play. And he's showing you that this midah is kol with the other midas, which is not it's not the main message of the Alter Rebbe. He just wants to, once he has that clear demonstration how every day another midah came into place, he's going to show you how they came into play. They were kol with all the other midas, but namely the Alter Rebbe's message. And again, he quotes from Eliyahu, which we hopefully will mention, which is the conclusion of this chapter, which is the punchline over here, that lav de'iz loch tzedek yidir di'udin, v'lo mishpat yidir di'irachim, v'lav mikolin inimidas klal, personifying, looking for Hashem himself. Hashem is transcendent and beyond any connection to any type of midah. Chas v'shalom, to identify HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nor with Chachma, nor with Bina, nor with Das. Certainly not with midas, medida, Akbala, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof. No. And Eliyahu makes it very clear. But Eliyahu does identify these 10 spheres, but he says it's lanhoga bein olmin. It's just to conduct, to create, to erect almin, different levels of almin, and so on and so forth. The Alter Rebbe speaks about the first 2 days, the 2 expressions of chesed and gvura. Doesn't go through all the days, but again, main thing, he just wants to give an example how every day another midah came into play, but it's just lanhoga bein olmin, not who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. And again, the example last week was something which at least brings us into that idea. In other words, it allows us to identify a concept that to another party you seem like this type of personality, but there's nothing of you. Certainly not the time that you're not when you're involved in any type of study, not when you're involved in any type of scholarly investment, like in the case of the master and the pupil. He's teaching, he's trying to convey a scholarly message. When the Rav sits down to invest in his own scholarly pursuits, no mishalim, no stories, no parables given. He goes straight for the substance of the Talmud or whatever he's learning. Again, we use the mashal of Teda scholarship to this pupil because he accepted upon himself his mandate and to be a teacher, to teach, and he does it with perfection. So he needs to use stories and metaphors and euphemisms in order that the Talmud should be able to appreciate and perceive these messages of Torah. So the Talmud, in the Talmud, in the students, in the pupils' eyes, and the observation is, yeah, this is a great storyteller or a great parable giver, if you will, but it's not the case from this side of the coin at all. And so too, again, we gave that example last week, and so too, Eliyahu makes it clear, no, mikol idin midas kal chas v'shalom, to define HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nor with midas and even nor with chachma bina das. It's just lan hagavay nomin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chveita v'atzmei. There's nothing, again, of these midas which personify HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even add again chas v'shalom, even to say so, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is understandably transcendent of all that. Have a good night.